Yeah, welcome all. Hello, Keith. Orca. Hang on. Oops. If you just trying to get my correct view in. There we are. Okay, so welcome as Keith. Oh, I can see you now. Keith Orca, Paladin. Welcome. Christine, Roger, Simon, Mariano, Jeremy. Welcome all.
Thank you.
Oh, Paladin, I didn't meet as I was hoping to the Derbyshire person that I was going to test your delicate phrase on, but I'll hopefully do so before we next meet. Would the first part of the word on its own, Mardi, be understood, or do I have to use the second part as well?
No, it has many uses. It's fine on its own.
On its own, okay, fine. Yes, well, welcome, Rosemary.
Hello, James.
Hello.
When else?
Right, so what I'll do now, hang on, share screen. Just going to share screen and the usual rigmarole that involves. Right, is the screen shared? Good, thank you. So what we're going to be looking at this time is just a recap of the Dhammapada 810, or 109. So I'll start off with just inviting any questions or comments before we then move on to the Karane Metta Sutta, verse 5. The absence of any question or comment will be taken by me as an indication, a tacit indication, that you have totally and completely understood everything and remembered in considerable detail everything I said last time. And I might even test you. Simon, okay, that was a shrewd move, Simon. You wanted to deflect me from this rather sadistic course you saw brewing. Come in, Simon.
Yeah, I would mind a little explanation on how apachayati gets to be he reveres or he worships or honors. Can't see how that fits together.
So which verse are we looking? Am I looking at the wrong verse?
No, sorry, I just gave it in a different form. So at the end of the first line, Vudha Pachayati.
Oh, sorry, Vudha Pachayano, yes.
So apachayati means he honors or reveres.
Correct.
That together, apa normally means kind of off or away, doesn't it?
Yes.
He might mean looking at or observing or regarding or something, but can't fits together really here.
Yeah, you have identified there, Simon, one of these cases. Sorry, oh, Weiss, I thought I'd turn my iPad off. This is one of those cases. Now, I'll start off by saying, for the great majority of words, certainly in Sanskrit, and yeah, in fact, I've also said that the great majority in Pali, Sanskrit is a bit neater, but the same principles apply. You can analyze a word down to its root and then the various additions to the root. Mostly, mostly the ones we're concerned with are the prefixes. And by that analysis, you can say, oh, now I've got it. And it mostly works. Mostly works, you see, like a complete understanding, or at least to the extent of your mental satisfaction that you've got it. There are some cases where you've just got to do a slight mental gymnastic, and that leaves you with the slight doubt, if you're a bit obsessive about it like me, the slight doubt as to whether it's the kind of correct mental gymnastic that you've done. Christine, was that your hand raised? Ah, right, okay. I thought I saw your hand up like that. So this Apache, I'm just going to call it up in the Pali Society's dictionary. If you look at the first, look at the verbal noun here, Simon. So apachaya. The first one has nothing to do with respect, and this does make a falling off, diminution. This one is as you would expect. Chi means to pile up or heap up. Dhamma vichaya, the analysis of dhammas. There's the other one, meaning honoring or to pay respect to. And it's from this other root, chi. There are two entirely separate roots, chi, homonymous roots. And what does the apa mean there? Because apa, as you correctly say, means of away or off, and it's cognate with our English off. And the German ab, ab. So why does it mean respect? The basic meaning of the other root chi is to look. It may mean to look away at somebody, to avert your gaze towards him. In other words, he averts you, he commands your respect. He's a head turner, as it were. That's the best I can do at the moment, though that's one where, I mean, I think it'll do. And for example, look at our English word to respect. Spect just means to look. To respect means you look at it a second time, not just a passing glance. You look at it again or keep on looking at that person. So it commands your attention. Possibly the apachaya has that same meaning as respect, to look at again, to look away at.
Isn't there a thing in some cultures, though, that you don't look directly at somebody who's in a, you wouldn't stare them in the eye, you kind of avert your gaze in a respectful sort of way?
That's right. And in fact,
so it might be you look away rather than staring. You wouldn't meet their eyes because that would be disrespect.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, I mean, I know that rule used to hold in Japan. In fact, oddly enough, we used to have that same etiquette in this country, that you should not look directly at the king if you're talking to him. It's certainly up to the time of George III. If you were having an audience with the king, you'd be standing next to him, but you would look slightly where you would not look at him directly in the face. So I haven't heard of this applying in India, but that's a good point, Paladin. Yes, that's a good point. So it's just one of those slight mysteries we have to live with. But hopefully it will not be too detrimental to our practice and to our leading of the holy life, which is, after all, the underlying reason why we are doing this. But yeah, that throws an interesting thing into the mix, Paladin. So thanks for that.
if I can ask a supplementary one, which is about the four qualities at the end of the verse, which increase with this habitual respect. I think last week with Vanna, you said it obviously it refers to caste and color and beauty. And you said it's something to do with like a covering. And it just occurred to me,
It is, yeah.
may have said it then, but is our word veneer derived from that?
I don't actually know, but I don't know whether you're familiar with this one, perhaps.
Etym Online, yeah.
Etym Online. I mean, as a quick look up before going into all the other research and the other works of reference, this is just a first go-to. From fournir, to furnish, okay. So it seems not, but it's always worth following these things up, because sometimes you follow them up and discover something even more interesting as you go along. But so the covering is from the vri root. Let me give you. So this varna, oops, in Pali first, varna. And it's varna because it's from the Sanskrit, say from the Sanskrit, you know what I mean. Closely related to Sanskrit, varna, and it's from the root vri, meaning to, it has the idea of both covering and blocking, the root vri. And we have some very important words within our Buddhist practice from the root, like nivarana, a hindrance, something that blocks you down. To cover and to block, you can see where the words have that there's an overlap. This is one you've heard from me before. Our word weir, because a weir in a river blocks the rapid flow of water, calms the flow. That's the purpose of a weir. It's just a block that you put across the river.
Does Veramani come from there then in Pali? You know, in the precepts.
No, I'll come right back to that in a moment, Mariana. That's a good one though, because on the surface it looks as if it could. In fact, it doesn't. So we've got weir, then a blockage, and also the idea of holding something away. In German, you have Wehr, as in the Wehrmacht, literally the defense force, the Wehrmacht, the army. The Wehr in the sense of to push away, to stop, to defend. So the Varna, Varna, starts off with meaning a covering, and by extension, the color, because the color of something is the visual appearance of its outer surface. It's like a color covering something, and then it has the extensions of meaning, meaning beauty, and then color in the sense of one's caste, as in the caste system in India. And in this case, it is beauty. So Veramani, iPad again. which of course we have in the precepts. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Veramani, in fact, the root of this one is ram. Those of you who have done some Sanskrit with me will remember the word virama. Virama meaning rest or pause, which is a term used in Sanskrit grammar. In fact, just to remind you, tat. If you write tat, if you write what I've just written in the Devanagari, some of you will remember that actually will be pronounced tata, the way I've written it. If you want to make it tat, you just block. Now that becomes tat. That's the virama, meaning a pause. So pausing, resting, viramati, the v with the separative v means you rest away from it, you pause away from it. And in Latin, desistere, to kind of put yourself away from it, in modern English, to desist. So the viramani is the idea of stopping doing it and putting yourself away from it, so desisting from. So that's the that's the explanation of that. Though I can well see, Mariana, if you're looking at that word for the first time, you might think that it's from that root Brit, but it's not.
Thank you.
All right. So from that same root vri, we have what would be in Sanskrit nivarana. Ni meaning in or down, here down. Nivarana would mean blocking down. Therefore, something that hinders you. Unaccountably, and this is just something we've got to live with, the ni has become lengthened in Pali, nivarana, and that's the word that in Pali, we talk about the hindrances, that's the word, the nivarana. It's come into Buddhist Sanskrit also with a long E, but it shouldn't be there. It just is. It's one of these things I might even go as far as some of these slightly annoying changes. Why has it happened? We've got the perfectly good, well-known verbal prefix ni with a short e, meaning in or down. Why is it lengthened in nivarana? Well, the answer is, I don't know. It just is. And when you see later Buddhist works in Sanskrit, they also write it with a long nivarana, but that's because they've, as it were, borrowed it back from Pali into Sanskrit, so have kept the long E of the Pali. But look at it essentially as, so look at that as essentially nivarana, a down blocking, which is the way of expressing a hindrance, and it blocks you, holds you down, prevents you from moving on, as it were. Okay, I've come to the end of that rabbit hole. Was there anything else that arises out of this? Oops, where are we? And by the way, this word, sorry, I'm looking at the Devanagari. This word, dhamma here it's used in its almost widest possible sense, just things.
Translation I've got says qualities. Does that work? Or qualities?
Your English is as good as mine. You tell me if it works.
Well, I meant linguistically, right? I mean, it works as a translation.
Yeah. I suppose so. It's such a wide word. It really is such a wide word.
Yeah, it's all over the place, isn't it? It's kind of stuff in general.
It's stuff in general, yeah. In fact, I was explaining to somebody, there was on a retreat a couple of weeks ago, there was a Norwegian participant and was asking me about this word, and I was able to give her a wonderful example about the broadness of the use of words. And talking about Dhamma, and I said, well, it just means a thing generally. You know, it can mean the Buddha's teaching everything through a thing. And she looked at me a little bit puzzled. I said, okay. I remembered a little bit of Norwegian that I have. What do you call your parliament? You call it in Norwegian Storting, which literally means big thing. I said, oh, yes. I said, right. So in Norwegian, you've got your word thing, meaning a thing, but you equally use it for your parliament. And not only that, but the Romans did it as well. Look at the Republic, La Repubblica, or Res Publica. Res Publica, res means a thing. So the Res Publica, which we have as Republic, is the public thing, the thing that affects the public, everyone, the thing that belongs to everyone.
Actually, in Veneto, we say roba, and it might be related, but in Italian, it is cosa, or chose in French, or something similar.
I'm sorry, say that again, Mariona, I didn't catch well.
In Veneto, we say roba for thing.
La roba, yes, okay, yeah.
Whereas in Italian, it is cosa.
Cosa, yes. But of course, when we, now, it's odd enough in modern Italian, roba comes from roba, meaning a robe, clothing, and cosa comes from causa, meaning cause. So in later language, they've done duty to mean a thing. But if you go back to Latin, the actual thing is res, as in realis, that is thing-like, and reality, res. Yeah, roba and cosa. So there we are. So that's the this wide use of this word dhamma, dharma.
Is it the same in Sanskrit, or is there a slight difference between the two, meaning Pali was even wider? You know,
I think, put me slightly on the spot there, but I'm reasonably confident in saying that the meanings have become wider in Pali. And especially in Abhidhamma uses, it just means a thing, whatever thing is you happen to be talking about at the time.
Yeah.
And it's not only, the Dharma, the teaching, but you can also have, well, as you know, akusala Dhamma, unskillful Dhammas, unskillful qualities, negative qualities.
It is incorrect. Sanskrit tends to be a bit more precise than.
It does, yeah, it does tend to be more precise. I'll keep my eyes open in Sanskrit to see whether it does have that extended meaning. It may well have that extended meaning in Buddhist Sanskrit, for example, with the Charyavatara, and Buddhist Sanskrit generally. I'll keep my eyes open to see if it does.
Thank you.
Actually, the first way of keeping one's eyes open for that is just go straight to dear old Monier Williams. And I'm very happy that the very first meaning that Monier Williams given is Sanskrit is that which is established or firm. And some of you may remember me saying that the came into Latin as a f. And the root dri means to hold, and something that is a dharma, Latin becomes firmus, as in terra firma, terra firma, we call it in English, meaning solid ground. So then, firmus, steadfast, ordinance, law, usage, practice, customary observance, right justice, virtue, law, justice, law, ethical precepts, law, nature, character, and then the various other minor meanings. And finally, a thing, but that's right down at the bottom of this list. and he just quotes one reference for it. So yeah, it may be, that's something I'll just have to keep my eyes open. Sorry, Roger, was that you coming in?
Yeah, James, you mentioned Buddhist Sanskrit, and if that's different to classical Sanskrit, why is it different? Is it a kind of amalgam of Prakrits and classical Sanskrit, or what?
Okay. Actually, I just had kind of 10 lights flashing all around my brain as you asked that.
Sorry.
Okay, no, it's a perfectly valid. I meant, well, okay. For example, you have it's almost like Church Latin, if you're familiar with Church Latin. You have the classical Latin, the thing we did. Some of us had the misfortune to have nasty masters teaching us at school. Some of us had the good fortune to have nice masters. I had a mixture of both. You had the classical Latin. You had the poets Virgil and Cicero, all the classical stuff. Then as time went on, the language developed and developed, and you would have usages. You'd say, hang on, Cicero would never have said that. Virgil would never have said that. So you have classical Latin, and then of course in Church Latin, you have usages that kind of start reflecting the local language. Where you can, so it's not as if that is Sanskrit. We've got Moni Williams' Sanskrit dictionary, we've got the Sanskrit grammars, we've got Panini, that is Sanskrit. That is kind of monolithic item A, which it more or less is. And we have an equally monolithic thing called Buddhist Sanskrit. The answer is no. It's like anything that's not classical Sanskrit, but you find in the Buddhist text, can be referred to as Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit. For example, you will see Shantideva. You will see he's pretty classical. There are a couple of usages where he's borrowed a word from Pali because it had become so well established in Pali. So he's writing almost the equivalent of a Ciceronian Latin, Ananian Sanskrit, but with a few borrowed words back in. So, for example, if Shantideva wanted to write about the hindrances, he would almost, I'm not sure if he does, but he would almost certainly have used the word nivarana with the long E, even though that's not classical Sanskrit. You then look at other things like the Gandhari Sanskrit Dhammapada, which is heavily influenced by Pali. So let me just call up something here. AA language, okay. We've got the Egerton Buddhist Hybrid Sanskrit Dictionary. It's online and it's searchable in the same way as the Moni Williams. Oops, I'm just trying to, let's look, for example, Nivarana. Now, the reason, if there's a word that's classical Sanskrit and is used that way by the Sanskrit writers, it will not appear in Egerton's dictionary. Egerton's dictionary just gives you the departures from classical Sanskrit. Let's see whether he has dharma there. Okay, he's pretty detailed and scholarly. Very common. If you want me to go on about hybrid Sanskrit, I'll I'd love to do it, but I just need a little.
That's helpful.
no,
Just one quick thing. I mean,
Please.
okay, so you got classical Sanskrit changing in the context of Buddhist texts, but did it change in other contexts because of local languages or whatever?
That is a bit beyond my knowledge, but I think the answer is no. And if it did change, then it would simply have been somebody not writing good Sanskrit. Somebody who knew it, but not well enough. In this hybrid Sanskrit, it had become pretty much accepted usage, just as in ecclesiastical Latin, you do get departures from classical Latin.
Okay, thanks.
So it's just this word Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit is a bit of a misnomer because it suggests that there is a specific well-organized thing, but it's a basket of meaning, and everything that purports to be written in Sanskrit by the Buddhist writers, but there's actually a departure from classical Sanskrit, is lumped into this big basket of Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit.
Thank you.
And there are editions of the Dhammapada that are heavily Palified. They're written in Sanskrit, but very clear Pali in influence. And I think that Dante Alighieri regarded himself as writing in Latin. Isn't that right, Mariano? I think he at one point he says, "I am writing in Latin." That manifestly wasn't. That he regarded it as a continuation of Latin, and indeed, where does Latin end and Italian start?
It is the same with the English Empire. They regarded themselves as the continuation of the Roman Empire. The same with the Tsar in Russia and the Kaiser in Germany. All right, I'll stop there.
That's right. The Kaiser in Latin becomes the Kaiser in German. Of course, as you said, Tsar in Russian. But that's as it spreads from language to language. So we must beware of thinking anyway. My bottom line was beware of thinking there's an absolute strict boundary line. There's a neat organized thing with a wonderful grammar to it called Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit. Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit is everything that purports to be written in Sanskrit, might be closer or further, but contains manifest departures, things that Harmony and the classical grammarians would have said we wouldn't have allowed. In practical terms, it's never really bothered me. When I've been reading Sanskrit, written by Buddhist writers, and there's a departure, I said, okay, well, there's a bit of Pali has crept in there, whether deliberately or otherwise, we don't know. I mean, you get later Christian writers in Latin been writing things that Cicero would never have written, but whether they were consciously doing it. And for instance, not so long ago, I was reading an account of some kind of some battle in Latin. I was struck by this phrase, fuit vulneratus in pede. Literally, he was wounded in the foot. And hang on, no classical Latin writer would have written fuit vulneratus in pede. That sounds a bit like French being translated back into Latin. And in pure Latin, you write in pede vulneratus est. He was wounded in the foot. But there we are. It's clearly Latin, but heavily influenced by probably medieval French syntax. So is that Latin or not? Well, okay, let's just be a bit more gentle with our boundaries. Anyway, back from this entertaining topic. Well, entertaining for me anyway. Who doesn't bore too many of you? Let's get back to Pali. And talking of classical Latin and Dante, I mean, sometimes I feel that it's almost like Dante speaking. If Dante lived in India, the language that he was writing would be the equivalent of Pali, and so close to Latin, and yet with its own rules, its own vocabulary, but very clearly arising out of Sanskrit, arising out of Vedic, Proto-Vedic. Right. Are we ready to move on? What's next up? Are we on to the Karaniya Metta Sutta now? All ready for that? Here we are. Boom. This is the Karaniya Metta Sutta, and we're on verse, the correct verse, hang on, should be verse 5 we're on. Verse 5, here we are. I'll just read it and then we'll analyze it. Ditta vayeva aditta ye cha dure vasanti avidure bhutava sambhave siva sabbasatta bhavantu sukhitatta. And as I do these Pali texts, and I'm carrying on and on, I'm just thinking of this burden of responsibility that Mariano carries, because it was Mariano who first suggested to me that for extra practice I should write everything in the Devanagari script as well. Well, why not? Why not? So once more, then Ditta Vayeva Aditta. I'm very glad you did, Mariano. Ye Chidure Vasanti Avidure Bhutava Sambhave Siva Sabbasatta Bhavantu Sukhitatta. So Ditta, very simple, Sanskrit drishta, from our root drish, drishta, ditta. We also have from, this is the standard past participial ta ending, drishta, and drishta in Sanskrit. By the way, of where I'm meant to be. I think I've explained this before. We have the root drish. That's the root meaning to see, plus ta. So the past participle is regular, regular. But it's just a rule of sandhi that wherever you get a sh plus a t, always they both become retroflex like that. That's kind of inviolable rule. That is why drishta becomes drishta. Equally with the suffix t that typically added to the root makes a verbal noun, always feminine. That's what gives us drishti, literally a seeing, and therefore a view, an opinion, and so on, or a way of understanding things. And that's the one that we have in Pali, drishti ditti in Pali, as in samaditi, often translated as right view. So here we have ditta in its ordinary meaning of seen, therefore visible, capable of being seen. So the ditta just means visible, all beings, whether they are visible. Dittava yeva, the ye is just a euphonic insertion. Dittava eva aditta, whether visible or aditta, invisible. Yecha, ye, those who, yecha, and those who, dure vasanti, vasanti, they dwell, they live, Dura means far. It's both a noun and an adjective. So as a noun, it just means the distance. So dure, in the distance, meaning in a place far away. Or avidure. This vi is inserted. He could equally well have said adure, not far away, but avidure. He needed the extra syllable here, and vi comes to the rescue. So vidura, dura just far, vidura has the additional idea of far and separated, the more the emotive sense of it. Simon, please.
Just a bit more on the Yeva. Could that not be Ye Eva? I'm sure I've seen that somewhere in the sense of those who are seen and even those who are not seen. Those who are not seen being more difficult to kind of grasp or get your head round.
Dittava ye eva aditta. Yes, it could be. Nice one. Dittava ye eva. In fact, now you've said it, Simon, I immediately prefer your interpretation. So
even yeah, because in your YouTube session on this one, you actually present the case for that one. You're saying it could be one or the other.
I got there before Simon, did I?
Yeah, you did.
Good. I said I'm. Thank you very much for reminding me about that. I'd forgotten. So Simon, you're to be congratulated either way. That either you got it out of your own head, or you actually remembered what I'd said in a YouTube session.
I just anticipated your loss of memory.
Rightly so. Quite rightly so.
It does make sense, doesn't it?
I'll be right with you, Roger.
In the sense that if you're saying the scene, I mean, that's pretty obvious. It's just what's arisen. And you're saying even that which is unseen, so other realms, other beings.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes good sense, Simon, because you're right. I mean, okay, if you can see him, you can think about him, have an opinion, do something. And then, out of sight, out, can't see him, don't care. But here's even those, it's passing your mind, look, even those that you can't see. Okay, Simon, we're going to adopt that now. We'll adopt that as our official stance. Yes, Roger, please.
But would it be Yeva with Sandy if it were Ye Ava? Would it not be Ya?
Oh no, okay, it couldn't be Ya.
Couldn't be Ya, no.
No, because I'll tell you why. Because this is the pronominal declension, and so the plural would be masculine nominative plural would be Ye.
But what do we get? Oh, sorry, go on.
So I'm going to say Te is another one, they. And you say all Buddhas, Sabbe Buddha, all Buddhas. So that's what this is the pronominal declension. Normally, the makes its nominative, masculine nominative plural in a long Buddha, Buddha, and so on, Nara. For the pronominal declension, which is the pronouns and certain words like Sabba, all, Eka, one, and various other, Para, other. It's the pronominal declension where the masculine plural is E, not A, and same in Sanskrit and Pali. So it would have to be Ye, those who, as here, Ye, which I've got as in one P.
That's not the point. I'm making actually. I'm sort of clumsily getting round to. I've got a Sandy grid in front of me, and what do you get with Sandy if you combine Ye and Ava?
If you combine Ye, Ava, you would probably okay. Are you looking at a Sanskrit Pali Sanskrit Sandy chart or a Pali Sanskrit chart?
I'm looking at a Sanskrit chart.
Okay, right. Here we go. Sanskrit, Sandhi, very exact rules. That's how it is. Pali, Pali Sandhi is a bit like the profligate, beautifully profligate use of the apostrophe in Italian. That you can do your Sandhi pretty much how you like. So in Pali, you could see equally ye eva or just yeva. So the rules are so much more relaxed about Sandhi in Pali. In fact, I would say that in Sandhi, above all other areas of grammar, is where Pali is most kind of relaxed about it, about rules. In your Sanskrit grid, ye eva should become ya eva.
Yeah.
A plus A becomes A. But you'd never see that in Pali. Yet ever. I'd be extremely surprised to see that in Pali.
But James, I had a similar question about Sukhitata at the end. So the same thing, is it? So if it's Sukhitata in Sanskrit, would that not be a long R?
It would.
Yeah.
It would be Sukhitatmanaha in Sukhitatmanaha in Sanskrit.
But not in Pali.
But not in Pali, because we've got you're right, it's the Sukhita. In fact, we go Sukhita. I could even split the Sukhita. Because you've got the double consonant following, that you almost always results in the previous vowel that would otherwise want to be long becoming shortened. Doesn't always happen. With Pali, you've just got to accept that you sometimes, you make your Sandhi in different ways. And it's just optional. And imagine in Italian, you sing amor, amor, but if you see it on the dictionary, it's amore. You can drop off the e if you feel like. Sonio, sono io, sonio. You can do either. And you've got a wide range of choice. It's one of those ones where we just have to exercise a certain measure of kshanti in Sanskrit, or kanti in Pali. Exercise this patience and forbearance. I'll just do this back now. So was there anyone else who was just going to come in then? Okay. So Dittava ye eva, and even ye eva, and even those who are aditta, unseen. Yecha, and those who vasanti, those who dwell dure avidure. Far and not far away.
I got a silly one to ask there, I can't get it out of my mind.
Okay, Mariano.
Is it the same ultimately root as dur, as in dukkha, difficult, and by extension it is difficult to reach, it is far, and
I don't think so. Let's just see whether we can. So, okay, so Moni Williams is not quite sure, probably from do one, but see, there's another word here it refers to. What is do one anyway? To go. I've never seen this word. I don't recall ever having seen this word in actual use, meaning to go. it may be one of these highly obscure ones that occurs once in one of the Vedas, so it goes into the dictionary. So the answer is I don't think so. I don't think so.
Thank you.
By the way, one thing I fairly recently discovered as searchable online. Are any of you familiar with Pacorni? Pacorni, his wonderful book, the Indo-Germanisches Etymologisches Wörterbuch, the Indo-Germanic Etymological Dictionary, which is available online, and it runs to many, many hundreds of pages. Delighted to find it online, rather than spend many, many hundreds of pounds on a hard copy that I found online. There we are, it is on. But I don't know how. Let's just see. Hang on, we might find the answer here. Good on copy. Oops, silly me, copy. Okay, now the trouble is you look up Dura and it gives you every single occurrence in the entire dictionary. I don't know. Okay, I best not spend time on this now, otherwise I'll just go down my own private rabbit hole and leave you all thoroughly bored and annoyed. But anyway, I'll include Pacorni and the links to it in my next version of the study resources guide. So bhutava sambhavesiva. Bhuta, we all know that just means from the root bhu to be. Bhuta has a variety of meaning. It means bean, and it's directly cognate with our English word bean. But in this context, it means somebody or a being that has already come into being, that we'd gone through the process of brew, therefore has become, is in existence. That's the meaning of it here. So, Bhutava, whether the va, either or, whether one or the other, also meaning including both. Sambhavesiva. So bhava means being. Sambhava, we have bhava with this meaning of being or coming into being. And with the prefix some here, cognate with our Latin con and cum, is like the completion of a process, therefore having been born. That's where the word sambhava actually means birth. Why does sambhava, sam plus bhava, mean birth? It means that because the process of actually finishing up as an independent human being, as a little baby just born, it's actually the culmination of a process. Your previous life, your intermediate stage, conception, gestation, and finally physical birth. So the sambhava that's a notable completion of a phase. You've been born. That's the sambhava. So a completed stage of the process of becoming. And the esiva, it's the word esha in Sanskrit and esa in Pali means a desire. So if you are sambhava esa, you are birth desiring, therefore you have a desire to be born. So here it's talking about bhutava sambhavesiva, those who've already come into being, those who have already been born, as just admit somebody, those who've already been born as human beings, and sambhavesiva, those who are desirous of taking birth, who wish to become human beings. So I've got people in the waiting room, can we admit all? Sabbasatta bhavantu sukhitatta. Sabbasatta could equally correctly have been written as two separate words. Here it's made a compound, sabbe satta. And elsewhere in the Metta Sutta, we do have sabbe satta as two separate words. If you split the compound, sabba then has to decline fully because you're treating it as a separate word. That's where you get sabbe satta. And here we see again if it was sabbe satta, that's because it's the pronominal declension, as we've just been discussing, all beings. But it has virtually pretty much. Does it sabbasatta, sabbe satta? Is there a difference? Probably very tiny and marginal. Sabbasatta is it more of a whole kind of a body, a corpus of beings. But sabbe satta has more the idea of all separate beings. You're trying to encompass all separate beings. It's not always like that, but there's that slight hint of one or the other. And in fact, when they're used, both forms are used in the Karaneya Metta Sutta, and I don't think I'd commit myself to saying that they had different meaning. Clearly, they mean the same thing. Though just as a linguistic nuance, there is that slight difference.
I suppose it is like saying the biosphere or something similar.
That kind of thing, yes. Well, a collective. Yeah. That would be along those same lines.
There might the differences be just for the meter, for the sound of it, as much as anything else.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you said that, because we mentioned the meter earlier, which is am I being really slanderous in saying they do one or the other simply to fit the meter? And saying one because in some cases, yes, clearly it is done in that way.
Well, English poetry and Shakespeare do it all over the place, don't they?
They do, yes. No, it's not slanderous at all. They're entitled to, within the rules of the language, they can adjust to fit the meter. Yes, okay, it's not slanderous at all. They've got a meter. They want to fit the meter. The language allows it, and so they do. That's perfectly in order. For example, in the teaching of the Buddhas would normally buddhanam sasanam, the new genitive plural, buddhanam sasanam. But you sometimes see in one of the verses, 183, I think it is buddhana sasanam. They drop out the final M, which in prose would never be done. But in poetry, they allow themselves to do it. Buddhana sasanam. I suppose there may have been some brave soul who's actually written out the rules of Pali and when it can be done and when it can't, but he would have to be a brave soul to do it. Maybe, if any of you know, let me know. Simon, please.
Just two questions. One of them about sambhavesi and esati, which means to want or desire. I mean, things like pariesati and gavesati and so on.
Yeah. So the idea of both desiring and seeking, which is the same, they're overlapping meanings. You can carry on, yeah.
Is it related to ichati, to want, or is that a completely different root?
I have a feeling that they're kind of related roots. You get quite a number of roots that are now listed as set in the Dhatuparta, in Paninian grammar, listed as separate roots. but started off life as the same root. One obvious example is our root E to go, and also Ya to go. And Ya is clearly an expanded form of the short E. And from, I mean, it makes a verb. You can have yati. And Ya makes the noun yana, meaning literally going, and therefore a vehicle, as in Mahayana, the great going, the great vehicle.
And you have yapeti, to keep oneself going, to be in good health.
That's right, yapeti, that's right. So you have the, it's quite common, if you want to make a causative verb from a root ending in a, you put in a p. So in Sanskrit, yapayati, in Sanskrit, yapeti, mean to make something go, and therefore keep something going, and therefore, as you said, Simon, you know, to make a living, keep yourself going.
It is interesting because you know, the normal translation is those born and to be born, but it actually says those desiring to be born. I need to change my own version.
I have seen both in translation.
The actual Pali says desiring to be born. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Initially, I thought it was a participial from a future participle. So bhavishyati,
Yeah.
in Sanskrit bhavishyant, and Pali bhavisati, participle, quite a rare to use the future papa, bhavisam, therefore about to be born. But that would be bhavisanto in Pali. I initially thought it was a variant of that, but I'm inclined not to think so. No, I think the sambhava esa, birth desire, having a desire to be born, is the correct one.
Can I ask a second one about the word satta?
Satta, yes.
It's just that obviously a being. Sometimes you see online different places, normally from people associated with the Thai monk Buddhadasa, who try and derive satta from sajjati, like hanging, dependent upon, clinging to, in the sense that the past participle, these are just, there are no persons, there are no beings really. It's all flow, and that we can only identify them through the clung to, the kind of grasping. And I'm just wondering if this has got any grammatical basis, or whether it's just wishful poetic thinking.
The answer, I would say, is actually both. This was Buddhadatta or Buddhadasa.
Buddhadasa.
Buddhadasa. Well, there are certain scholars for whom I have enormous respect, and I feel rather shy about saying I don't agree with them, because you know some of them are much profounder scholars than I who am I to say that? Therefore, I mean the way I should correctly say it is, I would like to be convinced, and therefore I would be very grateful if I had the opportunity to see his detailed explanation, which I'm quite capable of being convinced by, but through my own misfortune, I have not yet had the advantage of seeing the explanation, which does not, as things stand, with my own limited grasp of things, fit with what I know, which is a polite way of saying I tend to agree it's slightly wishful thinking on Buddhadasa's part. Grammatically, yes. We've got, let me just call up the, here we are. So satta You're correct. Why did it keep doing this to me? It gives me a quarter screen. There we are. Satta. So a living being, a creature. Goodness me, there are several of them. You see, satta one, participle of sanj, sajjati, hanging, clinging, attached to. We often see it in the, very frequently with the verbal prefix a. If you're asatta, you are kind of clinging onto something. So the answer is grammatically, Simon, yes, it can certainly mean that. But the reason that, I mean, there are so many instances clearly it just means being. You have a bodhisattva, for example, which in Pali, bodhisattva, that's not clinging to bodhi. It means somebody into whose being, whose being is inclined towards bodhi. So I will file that as an interesting little, light going on in the background to be looked at. Though I don't recommend it as the official interpretation. So, Mariano, please.
Can I be a bit controversial before going?
Well, Mariano, I mean, we enjoy it. You're a wonderful rabbit hole digger like that.
All right. So the Sambhavesi, in late Theravada, based on the Abhidhamma, rebirth is instantaneous, basically. But Sambhavesi implies an intermediate state, and it is early Buddhist scripture. And you can read anything in there, but I am happy to leave it there. But it is interesting to notice that when the Theravada, the modern one, say that they are the original form of Buddhism, not quite. Okay, I'll disappear now.
No, I mean, we enjoyed these controversies. I tried to take no stand on the grounds that is a bit above my pay grade. That is an interesting point. But the Sambhavesi clearly implies somebody's is between births.
Yeah.
All
right.
Okay.
Lovely. It has been lovely being around.
Okay. Thanks, Mariano. See you. Bye. Simon, yes, please come back in.
Mariano just logged off. I was just going to respond to his point, which is it could conceivably mean that a person is not like there's a being floating in the ether, so to speak, but even with simultaneous rebirth, there's a person or there is a being behaving in such a way that they are metaphorically seeking a rebirth. They will be reborn again due to their current unfortunate karma.
Okay, are you talking about people who are kind of currently existing as human beings, and by reason of their behavior, behaving as if they want to continue as human beings?
Yeah, people like me.
Okay. Don't be too hard on yourself, Simon. I tend to feel that you want to. There's at least one other in that category, Simon. Sorry. I'm sure all the rest of you are complete bodhisattva. However, that interpretation, Simon, okay, it's drawing a distinction between Buddha and Sambhavesi. If you are a Buddha, a being, and if you are a current being, like all of us here in this room are, but you are behaving in such a way as to evidently behaving in such a way as will lead to rebirth, as if you're desiring a rebirth, you will still be a Bhuta, but you will be a particular type of Bhuta, namely a Bhuta who wants to go on being a Bhuta. Here, the use of the va and the va, just on ordinary linguistic interpretation, looks as if it's splitting beings into two separate categories: those who are in being in the ordinary sense, as we all are now, and those who are not, but wish to come into being. So although I take your point, Simon, I think it's a very good one, I think linguistically, your point could fall down over how do you interpret then the va and the vas if it's treating these people as two distinct categories. The way you're putting it is we have the bruta as a general category and a subset of those, sambhavesi. Here it's treating the sambhavesi not as a subset of bruta, but as a separate category. That's just the legalistic academic kind of mind coming in.
Well, I think in honor of this group, I will take the grammatical rather than the doctrinal. So some
Right.
okay.
Okay. So I think we've got linguists here. We've also got three lawyers here, so we can't totally ignore the legal aspect of it, can we? The legal interpretation. Bhavantu, you all know well enough now. That's one of the simplest rules of grammar. That wherever you get a third person verb, singular or plural, ending in ti or nti, indicative, change the I to u, and you make it into an imperative, may they be, let them be. And this is happily a very simple rule that applies invariably across Sanskrit and Pali, that final ti to tu. So may let them all be sukta atta, literally happy selved. So were there any more questions arising out of that? So we're almost on to 1 o'clock now, a few seconds away from 1. So any more questions or queries, we can take those next time round in a week's time. And then I will see you all, a few of you in 3/4 of an hour, and all of you hopefully in a week. Just screen share, sorry.